Three dark and disturbing execution stories from the reign of Henry VIII. What if I told you King Henry VIII didn't just change the course of English religion, he turned the execution block into a full-on theatre of horror. We all know he had divorce issues and a talent for rewriting God's laws when convenient. But some of the executions during his reign weren't just brutal, they were tragic, twisted, and sometimes totally avoidable. Let's look at three of the worst executions during his reign. Spoiler, if you think losing your head was the worst part, you don't know the half of it. Anne Boleyn, the queen who blinked and lost everything. Anne Boleyn wasn't just any queen, she was the very reason Henry VIII broke up with the Catholic Church. He changed the country's religion to marry her, and only 3 years later after the marriage, he decided she was a bad investment. Anne was charged with adultery, incest and treason, all extremely convenient crimes when you're a king looking to find a way out of a marriage. But the evidence was sketchy at best, and historians widely agree the charges were fabricated. Her execution was mercifully quick. A French swordsman was brought in for a clean cut, but the emotional torture leading up to it was horrific. Anne spent her last days in a Tower of London, not knowing if she'd live or die from one moment to the next. And when it came time, she gave a speech forgiving Henry. Really, she forgave Henry. Think about that. You marry a king, help start a religious rebellion, and get decapitated for crimes you didn't commit. Thomas Cromwell, from powerhouse to headless. Cromwell was Henry's right-hand man, the architect of Anne Boleyn's downfall, and a genius behind England's split from Rome. And what did loyalty get him? A one-way trip to the chopping block. Here's where it gets darkly ironic. The same political weapon Cromwell used against Anne was turned against him. Henry was furious after Cromwell arranged a disastrous marriage to Anne of Cleves. You know, it's the marriage where Henry took one look at her and said, "No thanks." Cromwell was arrested during a council meeting, which is a bit like a CEO being fired mid-Zoom call, charged with treason and heresy, again classic Henry, and beheaded in 1540. But here's the twist. Henry regretted it. Not long after the execution, he realised he'd quite literally axed his most competent advisor, Margaret Pole, a 67-year-old grandmother with a sword problem. This one's especially disturbing. Margaret Pole was of royal blood, cousin to the king's mother, former governess to Princess Mary, and a devout Catholic. She wasn't leading any rebellions, but her son was. Margaret was quietly living out her old age, but this didn't matter to Henry. In 1541, she was accused of treason by association. There was no trial or real evidence. It was just Henry saying, "Hey, your son's stirring up trouble. Off with your head." Because she wasn't officially sentenced, there was no skilled executioner. The axeman was untrained. And here's where it gets absolutely brutal. It reportedly took 10 blows to kill her. 10. Witnesses said she tried to run, that she fought back, that she screamed prayers until the end. This wasn't an execution. It was an old woman being butchered in slow motion. And why? Because her name was inconvenient. Henry didn't just want to remove threats, he wanted to erase legacies. So what do all of these stories tell us? That under Henry VIII, survival wasn't about loyalty, nobility, or even innocence. It was about staying useful. The moment you became an inconvenience, whether queen, chancellor, or grandma, you were only one swing away from oblivion.